This is Roy Haggerty, and in this video I will demonstrate some underlying features of my application. I would suggest that you open to the full screen mode in your video viewer. Perhaps that is down here in the very right bottom. I've activated the application, and from the main menu open the normal selection interface. Now this interface is used to request and retrieve the data and render it to various page views. As I make my selections, you'll notice that it begins drilling down through classes and subclasses to expose the data sets or the content holders. Now, since this collection only has 8 data sets that are assigned to the American Airlines collection, I really find it easier and more effective just to unroll the classes and expose them directly, and I'll just go ahead and do that now, and it just takes a moment. Well, I thought it would just take a moment. There it is. Now with the data sets or content holders exposed directly, I'll move to the first one, the American data set. Now, as you'll note that each data set displays a short descriptive name that suggests the content. You can actually, in here where it says About, I click that, it can open the screen, a help screen, for instance on the American collection, and it gives you a description and other information about that. It says that this is American's a standalone and splintered by fleet type. And if you'll note too down here that the total page views that can be rendered is a little over 2,100. So it's a pretty substantial amount of data that we can get. Let's begin our drill down, and if you'll note that it opens to 7 categories of information. As we open the categories, there are subcategories, of which there's approximately 40 subcategories. And if we look in the subcategories, it opens to the accounts. Let's just go to one here, aircraft related. Let's look at the number of aircraft in service, and let's pick the service region. I'll just pick all service regions, and let's look at the quarterly data. So it'll come back and it should render, there it is, it renders a graphic or a dimensional page view that basically shows the titles and footnotes. It's the x-axis is over 9 quarters. In the legend we see the MD-80, the 737-800, the 767, the 757, and so on. It also includes a trend line that's really gives us a relative perspective as to the trend. It's statistical change that's really been extended to future periods. If you have any questions on the annotations and all, I do have a help screen that will lend to answer any questions you might have. Let's look at the annual data for the number of airplanes in service. That shows that looks like the MD-80s are being retired pretty rapidly, and 737-800s are being introduced. Now, if you notice, since these basically are splintered presentations by aircraft type, if we want to really look at the total number of aircraft, let's move down to this data set, the legacy data set, and we'll go to aircraft related, aircraft in service quarterly data, and then this will show American Airlines relative to its competitors or peers. So here we see Delta Airlines, American Airlines, Southwest is included here as a standard, and so on. We can also look at domestic service only. Let's look at quarterly. So not surprisingly, here is Southwest Airlines that seems to have the largest fleet, followed by Delta Northwest, and here's American. Now let's move back to the American collection. Let's pick something else here. How about the aircraft operating expense? Let's look at maintenance. Maintenance labor and airframes. Let's look at this per block hour, all service regions. Let's look at quarterly data. For some reason I seem to like quarterly data, don't I here? And as you'll notice, maintenance labor per block hour, and the most, I guess, most expensive airplane as far as maintenance labor per block hour is the 767, and it looks like the most cost effective, again, on a unit of production of per block hour, is the Boeing 737-800. Now, one thing that we can do is that we can actually go down here and let's look at the 737-800. Let's and see the maintenance again. Let's look at maintenance labor and airframe and engine. Same thing. By the way, if you want to know what's in that account, we can hit the About button there and it'll give us a full explanation. And we're looking at per block hour, all service regions, quarterly. And let's see what the competitors or the peers are doing. Now, you know, this is fresh data. I really haven't seen this. And as I look at Continental here, it looks a little strange, but I do notice that there's an annotation there that indicates it's a flag conformed data point. And by the way, when I talk about flag conformed data point, here's an explanation. Basically, what it's saying, it's detected an outlier and it's conformed that data point. And what I want to do then is let's look at the source data for this. And we'll look at, let's see where that source data needs to be, P52. So let's look up here at aircraft operating expense, Continental. Let's get that data, and it's going out, and it's retrieving the data, and it's going to render it into a page view. Actually, this is going to be what's called an XPS document. Sometimes it just takes a moment for this to initialize and come up. There it comes now, and as it opens, it's showing us basically side-by-side data for comparison purposes, and it shows the full source data in the report. And by the way, this data can be printed or saved, or you can view the history, which is the last, well, in this we looked at the history, be the last 10 years. But please note that there is no data there, so it makes me sort of wonder. Let's look at the scheduled filings here and see what's happened here. It's detected that there's no data. Say Continental Airlines apparently is delinquent in filing their latest filings. Now let's go back to American, and we'll go back to aircraft operating expense again. Let's look at total aircraft operating expense. So let's pick one here. Here's one at the AOE less fuel, and let's look at it per flight hour, and we'll go and look at all service regions, and we'll look at the quarterly data. And there's this in here, and it looks like, again, this 737-800 looks like a very, very efficient airplane based on the AOE less fuel per flight hour. Let's run down here and let's go down and let's look at the legacy operators again. Let's look at the same account, total aircraft operating expense. Let's just see how this looks from a total basis per flight hour, all service regions, quarterly. Well, looking like here is American Airlines looks like on a per flight hour basis it's most expensive as far as its fleet, and not surprisingly here's Southwest, United, and Delta Northwest here. Let's look at something here. Let's go up to statistics, capacity related, seats per departure. All I'm trying to do here is just see what the difference is, the size of the airplanes that the competitors are operating. You see here is American Airlines. It says here for the last period in the data label 177 seats per departure, and that's on a fleet basis, of course. And so it's a mid-region. Let's look at something else. Let's look at let's look at the stage length. This is another thing that has a that affects obviously ASMs, or the basic unit of production. It's kind of mid-range too, as we can see. If I close this and move back to and we're going to move back to aircraft operating expense. I tell you, there's a lot of data in here, and sometimes it just takes a bit when you move around to find, actually in this case, remember where I was. Okay, there's that per flight. Let's look at it on a ASM basis. So per ASM service regions. Yeah, now that's closed the gap somewhat. So the size of the airplane and the stage lengths has tended to offset some of the difference. But I really think this is something we should pursue, and I will pursue this in the next video.